Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us here. We're really excited to get to share with you some awesome ways that teachers have been using Snorkl. And I'm really excited because we have a really special guest with us here this afternoon or this evening, depending on what part of the country you're in or what part of the world you're in. It's Marcela Gomez, and Marcela is a math teacher, a STEM teacher in Houston, Texas, where she teaches fourth and fifth graders. I'm going to let her introduce more of herself in just a moment, but I'm really excited to have Marcela, Ms. Gomez, because she has just been such a huge advocate for how Snorkl can be impactful for her students and really getting her students to share and explain their thinking. We first met, I think it was last fall, probably around October, and immediately found that Marcela really shared a lot of this vision that we had around really centering student thinking and supporting it in really rich ways. And so I'm really excited to get to let her share this evening and let all of you learn from her awesome experience. So Marcela, a huge thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, John. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you, all the teachers, for joining. This is kind of more than just sharing the experience. It's kind of sharing the happiness that I feel after getting a Snorkl in my classroom. Because it was some sort of, a Snorkl is kind of something that I have been thinking about from the very beginning of my teaching years. And then this guy said, hey, do you want to use it? And I say, yes, please. So I just want to share my experience in this little time, because it has been great for my kids and of course great for myself. But first, if you want to know what is the person talking to you, say, who's this human being in front of me? I'm Marcela Gomez. I'm from Medellin, Colombia. So my first language is Spanish. So if I make any mistakes speaking English, I really appreciate your understanding. I've been teaching STEM subjects and also teaching STEM or having like STEM focused teaching sessions or learning experiences for more than 10 years, especially in Colombia, and also training teachers in other countries, especially Latin America. I've been also STEM coach for around 8 years. My specialty is creating a learning culture using STEM as the pretext or the excuse to make that happen. And nowadays, I'm a visiting international teacher in Houston, Texas. So you're going to say, okay, what's the thing? Let me start. I want to talk to you first about my community. My learning community is a public charter school in Houston, Texas. This community is 90% or more Hispanic. So most of the families speak kind of English, kind of Spanish. We have parents that only speak Spanish. It's kind of such a variety, but it's interesting. And this school has been one of the grade A schools in the state. It means it's a school with very high results. It's a very demanding school, so they really ask for the kids to show their thinking, to show their learning. So the kids are always trying to be involved in challenging learning experiences. So the challenge was huge. Now, what about my kids? It was my first year with them. I had fourth and fifth graders, math and science classes. And they are English language learners, or what we call EBs, emerging bilinguals. So also speaking English was a challenge for them, and obviously a challenge for me. Because honestly, when you're a newcomer, you may understand some things, but there are some words that you don't get until you get 2 or 3 years getting used to the accent and to the slang and everything. It was a challenge to find something to communicate better the way we were thinking. And I said, okay, what should I do to support my kids? And then an angel called Monique, said, hi, Marcela, do you want to try this? I say, yes, ma'am, I want to try. And I just started learning about the tool, and I say, okay, this sounds like me. And I fell in love. It was love at the first sight. I said, I want to use this with my kids. Then I told them, guys, guess what? Let's give this tool a try to see how it helps us building our learning. What do you think? They said, okay, cool. And throughout that school year, they found they really enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it, the experience with the tool. And I will tell you a little bit more about it later once I show how we got started, because it was a very special day for them and for me. So we said, let's start. So we created something to train the kids about how to use the tool. The idea was that they got familiar with the tool first. They understood how it works. So we created a sample class and one sample exercise, so they could see how to interact with the board, how to record their voices, how to do better. At that time, the Snorkl was only listening. It wasn't like checking the board by itself. So the instruction that I gave to my kids was, what if you're explaining your thinking to a blind classmate? What would you say? You cannot say what's there because they cannot see. What would you use? So this helped us creating like a structure to interact with the tools, right? And this was kind of the first exercise I used. This exercise, I just took like a template that I had. I took a snap, put it on the whiteboard, but I tried to use some instructions like show your drawings here, show your work here, for the kids to separate whatever they were doing and use it to explain themselves better. This is just a snap of one of the assignments that I got, one of the exemplars of the day. And then I got the insights. If you notice, most of them had kind of some gaps that we needed to address. So I said, okay, this is something that we need to check. If you notice, I don't know if you can read it from here, hope you can. They say incomplete, incorrect, misinterpretation. So this was telling me, okay, these kids need to finesse the way they explain, because they can tell me I may understand, but if the algorithm is not understanding, we need to just create something more structured for them. However, at the end of this lesson, I remember that the girl that made that exemplar, she read the feedback. And her first comment was, I'm proud of myself. An AI is telling me that I have a strong thinking. I said, so I told her, now you can believe me when I tell you that you have a strong thinking. The AI is speaking and agrees with me. So let's give it a try. And they say, okay, this sounds fun. And we created a working plan for the whole school year, at least for the first 6 months before we have the tests. We were following this plan. Before we recorded everything, we needed to script it out. We need to make sure that we know what we're going to say. We are intentional about our ideas, and we check them before we record. We need to plan. The way teachers do, the kids should do too. So they hold themselves accountable for whatever they are doing. And once they script it out, they need to synthesize what they want to say. So we had the target. Your recording should last between 1 and 2 minutes. So you're just focused on what you want to say in a more precise way. And we did this exercise 45 minutes a day, twice a week. One of them was for math. All the time was for math at the beginning. But then when they say, hey, did you know that you can do it for science? We just split. Math one day, science the other day. Something that I'm not adding here is that the kids had 2 instructions. They need to read the feedback and then identify what they need to improve in their script or on the board. The plan is that they can just check, okay, I can do this better. And then they can bring it to the work they are doing and try one more time. Per session, the idea was that they tried 3 times. 3 times. So they could see the feedback improving and they could kind of verify that they were going on the right track. And they said, Miss, but what if I got a strong at the beginning? Do I need to do 3 times? I said, you have the excellent option. Tell me, are you okay with the strong or do you want to make it an excellent? They say, yeah, I want to make it an excellent. So, okay, you have up to the excellent. You get the excellent at the beginning. Cool. We have more work to do. So they could go back and use the strategies for the next exercise. Normally they were 1 or 2 per session. And when they didn't have the session for some reason, they said, Miss, can I do this at home? Who am I to say no to that request? So let's keep going. If you're enjoying, I'm happy. The plan was consistency here. We didn't skip any Snorkl session at all. And actually, I was recording some of them. So I think I can show you that right here. This, if you see it, like the warm up was one of our first lessons, first trials, the one right here. Okay. So at the beginning, they were using iPads. That's what we had at the time. And we were working on this scripting. The second one shows how they were interacting once we used the laptops. Here, we already had the structure 3 times. Let's go for the strong or the excellent. If you notice, they all have their journals because they need to script out before they think on the recording. And later, I just noticed that proactively, if someone was struggling with their speech, they voluntarily went to support. For example, here they are working on science. And I remember that these 2 kids were just discussing about how to explain better to the algorithm. I didn't tell them, you do it. It was something that came from them because they felt confident enough to share, and they felt confident enough to support someone who needed some support. So for me, that was a proud time. I was proud of my kids. Then, as I said, this happened throughout since the fall until let's say May. Because in May we had a SAR test and the TELPAS test. So at that time we were focused on testing. But first I need to show you. How were we doing before testing? If you see, I don't know if you can see it, hope you can. The very first lesson, we had a lot of unsubmitted work, incomplete work. Students who just felt so like scared of failure, I guess, because it was their first time working with something like this. So almost half the class didn't complete the work. Okay, so they started, but they just gave up. And we had some strongs here. This little group of kids were kind of the ones who tried several times. This was their best try. This is not the first one, it was their best try. The second one, my goodness, I almost cried this day, I remember. But I said, okay, we can do this. And like time by time, if you check, the blue starts like growing. And around lesson 28, I got the first excellent. And I remember the joy of this kid. Miss! I'm trying to emulate my kid. Miss! I got an excellent. I remember the excitement of this voice. And I said, you see that you can do it. And I said, Miss, I want to try it again. Go ahead. So everybody said, okay, if he made it, I can make it too. And then we started finding more strongs and excellence after 15 weeks. It took some time, but now this was the standard for the kids. They felt confident enough to try. And something that I want to share is this part in yellow. This part in yellow that says fair, the kids right here were students struggling in English. But they tried until they said, Miss, I could do it this time. So for me, that was honestly a reason to say, yes, this is doing what I wanted to do. And using this data, we created some interventions with my colleagues. So we said, okay, these kids need some intervention into this stuff, these skills, they need this practice, they need to address these aspects. So I said, this can help. Then I found things like this. I'll have to stop this one. I want to show you here. Let me stop it here. I want to show you here two samples that I chose, because these ones are corresponding to the latest assignments that we had. This one, for example, was from math. One of my kids, his name is Gerard. Something that happened was that we created the structure of read the problem first, aloud, then explain the problem, finally provide your solution. So you can provide to this person that is supposed to be your blind partner more context. So we are not misinterpreting anything. Okay? So
Maximum Emily task is succeeded by several times and recorded the outcomes of getting even in odd numbers. The results are presented in our graph. How many times did Emily get an even number? How many times did Emily get an odd number? Explain them which day. So y-axis represents number of odd rows, and the x-axis represents number of even numbers. So they're asking how many times did Emily get an even number and how many times she got an odd number. So for the even number, she got 4 even numbers because it directly comes like this. And then for the odd numbers, she got 2 odd numbers because it comes like this. They never asked for maths, so they're not going to do them. It's only for Emily. So Emily rolled 4 even numbers and 2 odd numbers.
So if you see here, Gerard was not only reading the problem, but also showing the reference to analyze the problem. So he was trying to say, I'm doing this because our system provides these cues. And with this information, I can analyze this, and I can analyze the situation in this way. That's something that they developed through time. So if you're wondering, how long is it going to take? Whatever it's needed, whatever it takes, is going to be amazing. This girl, for example, this is one of my second samples, Marcela. She was this girl was terrified of speaking. So for me, this recording is meaningful because it means that she feels confident enough to say, this is what I know.
Identify whether each image represents an annular solar eclipse or partial solar eclipse or total solar eclipse XY. So I say image A is a total solar eclipse because the moon perfectly logs out the sun. And I think image B is an annular solar eclipse because it doesn't cover the sun completely, but it looks like a ring of fire around the moon. So, and then I think my image C says, I think it's a partial solar eclipse because it covers part of the sun, leaving a crescent shape.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why each image has different solar.
So if you notice, there is background noise. These are the voice of the other kids. However, the algorithm could recognize her voice. So if you're wondering if you should do this in the classroom, do it. It's going to work. I have evidence. If you don't believe me, I can show you the videos. It can be done in a regular classroom. So you can bring it to your regular classroom and just do some magic with your kids. So we found that the reading aloud really supported the understanding of the kids. And using representations prior to solving really helped them verifying that they really understood what they were reading. So they felt better to use this as a support for their thinking. Now, the questions that we had were how to improve the scripting process. So we worked on, okay, we can use what we already have, and how to follow progress more easily. These questions came in the classroom, and then John and Jeff said, hey, Marcela, guess what? Now we can use the previous whiteboard. So the kids don't have to do all the work again. I didn't have to ask them the question. They read my mind because they brought the answer. Say like, yay. And how to follow the progress more easily. Say, we're going to work on how you can visualize this for your kids. So then you can tell me if I wasn't praying for this, I was. And this was the answer to my prayers. Let's keep going with this. We reported the first results of this work, the ones that I have just shown to you, in an article in a journal in Colombia, an academic journal in Colombia, my hometown. So this was the first report with the preliminary results of the pilot. You can scan the QR code if you want to read it, but also a link is provided to you. So just take a look. And if there is something that I'm not considering here, please let me know. It would be great to finish the experience with the new group that I have. And the focus on this article was just to show that AI can really support the assessment, formative assessment, and at the same time, support the development of the skills in the kids, especially in math and science. That is my case. I've noticed that really AI helps me checking providing real-time feedback that the kids can comprehend and they can implement by themselves when creating a better outcome that shows the real, authentic thinking. And also supporting their learning of a second language, an additional language such as English. So please feel free to provide feedback. And I'd be really happy because this year I want to show the second report with this new group that I have. And guess what? After this, we received this information that made me extremely happy. The kids, they had in Texas, they have the TELPAS test. The TELPAS test is mandatory by law. It needs to be like the kids need to take it to show their proficiency in the use of the English language. Out of a group of 21 kids, 16 had to test because they had to show that they had improved their English usage, that they could receive instruction in English, regular English with no accommodations and everything. So that's why the test is made to like update what the kids need in the classroom. So I had 16 students that took the test. If they took the test, it meant that they didn't pass the test before. And now the grading scale goes from 1 through 4. To pass the test, you need to score 4. If you score 4, you say you met the criteria. So now you don't have to test again, but you're going to be an observation to see how your English is improving. Out of my 16 kids, 7 were scored with 4. And these kids had been testing since they were in second grade. So for them, this was such an achievement. And 5 of these kids scored 3. They were just this close to pass it. So I'm pretty sure that they will do better this year. They are not going to be with me, but I'm sure they will going to do better. And the first day of school, the principal gave us this news. I was talking to John about it a moment ago. All the kids showed some improvement, around 24% of improvement. It means out of the whole group, the whole cohort, 17% of the kids moved 1 level or more forward, so improved their level. The highest improvement was presented in, guess what? 5th grade. 57% of the kids improved at least 1 level. 57%, more than half all 5th graders. And if I want me to tell you, 1/3 of all 5th graders were my kids. Am I proud? Yes, I am. And they know it. So just as a way to like simplify, this is the summary of the experience. We have used the Snorkl app to support mathematical reasoning in my 5th graders in a public charter school in Houston, Texas. Okay, so public charter school, underprivileged kids. We could find that they were really improving the reasoning towards problem solving. They were using representations, they were using thinking aloud and supporting others to make sure that their thinking was structured enough to solve a problem. And this was reflected in their performance in the official TELPAS tests. So I'm sure that these kids are going to do way better now that they are in secondary school. And more news are coming because a new promotion has started using Snorkl today. Hope this has helped.
Huge thank you, Marcela, and a huge congrats to you and your kids for all the progress that you made last year. I know that is just that makes a difference not only for that one academic year, but for every future academic year that they have coming up. And I'm really excited to hear how it goes this year as well.
Well, thank you for asking. Just as some news, I tried today the tool I was telling you a moment ago. Today we tried a tool with 4th graders. These 4th graders haven't worked with me before, but today we gave it a try in science just to see how they were working. You should have seen their excitement when they just show their thinking, they receive the feedback, and they say like, hey, this is showing me how to do better. I want to do it again. And then they ask me, teachers, this is going to make you happy. Miss, can we practice home? Can you please assign more work so we can practice home? I didn't assign the homework. They asked for it. They wanted to do it because they were finding this helpful and they were finding themselves confident enough to try. So I said, who I am. who I am to say no to that request. So today they're trying, and they are already, a moment ago, if you heard this kind of like buzzing, one of the kids was saying, Miss, I have access already. I'm going to start my homework. So good signs.
That's awesome. I know there were a couple of questions that came up in the chat, and I have just a couple of questions too. I'd love to just take a couple minutes here. And if other folks have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I think one of the things that you mentioned here, oh, it's on the screen now again. Frankie, who's also in Texas, asked this great question around, I know you mentioned that you had students do some scripting and write notes before recording. And I wonder if you could tell a little bit about sort of that process. And then I think Frankie's question specifically here is around, did you do anything with those notes, or were students doing anything with those notes, or was sort of just the video sort of the final product?
Well, at the beginning, when they were scripting out, normally the kids showed me what they were trying to say. So I started asking questions about them to see if they were really like getting the whole picture of the situation, so they could like scratch, correct, or change the words that they wanted to use. At the beginning, I did that. Later, I just paired them. So they like practiced telling the story to another classmate, and they were providing feedback to the kids. So I don't understand what you mean. Do you mean this? Or, for example, if I'm telling you what I'm thinking, what the other student does is, do you mean this? And shows a drawing, a representation. So we could see if the message was clear and understandable. Something else that we did in class was, especially with science, for example, in science, when we were scripting, we also like share with the kids the scripts they kind of exchanged. And while reading, the students were some sort of auditors. So, and they were confident of, what does it mean? This is not the right word. Please check your notes. I mean, they were really harsh to grade their classmates. I felt so compassionate after I said them. I said like, and you say that I'm harsh with you, and you're grading your classmate like this. It's like, means they need to learn. He can do better. So like, okay. But it was nice because they felt like I understand and I can support someone. Then something that I did was like just taking some randomly and reading. So I could use them also to create other assignments using other tools. So we used kind of the keywords that they were using or the way they were explaining, and just bring this into the intervention part.
And if I remember right, at some point in the year, I remember talking to you, and you were at times you were actually sharing recordings students had made whole class. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what you did there and why you did that.
Sorry, say it again.
Why? And I think you chose to sometimes show students what other students had recorded, and I was curious if you could share a little bit about how that went and what impact that had.
The kids were happy. I mean, they knew that normally what I do is to show the top exemplars, because I want them to see, okay, look, even the top exemplars have feedback. So sometimes they have things to correct. And especially I was sharing the top exemplars because I had some kids that started like in the unsubmitted region. Like, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. So once I noticed that they started showing up and improving, those were the top exemplars that I showed. So, okay, guys, let's see how the exemplars are going so we can see what we need to correct and what feedback do you want to provide. Then I remember showing this kid, Elias, showing this work on the board. I said, guys, this is an example of how you address a question. Click on it. The kid was he couldn't believe it because he had a history of failing all the time.
Yeah.
So we said, guys, what is he doing? That's something that I do in class. They don't have to speak, but tell me, what is he doing? He's representing this number. Okay, what representation is he using? He's using an area model. Okay, what is the area model showing? It's showing this. So what do you think he's going to do with this representation? He's going to compare with the equations. And then we check the speech of the kid and I say, okay, he did exactly what we were thinking, but this part is not clear. So that helped me a lot for them to build up like better, more solid reasoning.
And I think so there's so much conversation these days around math identity and how we help students see themselves as mathematicians. And I think how powerful that must have been for some of the students to get to show off their math thinking and in a really supportive way and be celebrated by their classmates.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't believe it at the beginning, but maybe I don't have here the official star reports, but where I noticed the most of the progress was in my struggling kids. For example, one of my girls, especially my girls, because sometimes they feel like they are not good for math.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a minute, guys, I'm a woman. I'm good at math. You're my kids, so you're good at math. And I remember this girl that was, Miss, I'm going to fail the school year. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. So she started working. She was kind of the one that struggled the most.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got the official reports for the STAR test in math.
Yeah.
And she met. I mean, not only she passed, she met. It means that she passed at a high level.
Yeah.
And I said, like,
great.
I just did this because that's my way. I took the paper. And she said, like, oh.
Yeah.
So if she did that, and notice the rest of the girls, I say, like, this is not difficult. We can do this. So they feel better about math. They are not afraid of it anymore. Or that's what I want to think.
That's such a special moment. I want to ask one last question, and then we'll wrap up here. Is I think at the beginning you shared sort of how when you first came across Snorkl, you immediately felt this sense of like love at first sight.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what it was, because I think sometimes I think actually you hold some really special mindsets, Marcela, around what great teaching looks like and around what our kids are capable of. And I'm wondering if you could speak just a little bit to those pieces. What was it that in your mind Snorkl was allowing your kids to do, or allowing you as a teacher to do, that you knew was going to be really powerful?
What I found powerful about Snorkl was that the kids could see their thinking. They could see that they understood. They could use their own language to communicate their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we only work on paper and pencil, or we just put just like input answers on an app, but they are just the answers. Sometimes they are struggling to find the words or the models to see their thinking, to see if they are like kind of on the right path. The Snorkl helped me and helped my kids, giving like a face to their thinking through their words. So they could notice that they really knew that they were not bad because they couldn't show it in paper. It showed that they could use their words as a powerful tool to show that they really know what they are doing.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. I think in so many ways, the nature of what it means to be a competent math student is shifting. There's powerful tools now that will solve equations for you, and you can point your phone and use photo math and things. And one of the people I'm a really big fan of is Jo Boaler, and one of the things she talks about a lot is that math is about creativity and sense making and communication. And that if our kids are going to be mathematically competent, it's not just that they can write things down on paper, but they can explain what that means to us, and they can explain how it works, and that gives them sort of lifelong skills to apply it to different situations and feel that confidence that we want all of our kids to feel. So
definitely. Something that I would like to add is the kids observe you. You are their mentor. And not only their mentor, but also co-student. So if they see you as a teacher excited about whatever you're doing, they are going to mimic that excitement. If they see you, okay, you do this, you do that, they are going to take it like something they shouldn't care about. But if they see that you're structured and you're intentional about their learning, if you know what you want to ask them to do, and if they see you doing it with them, for example, the first try, if you try with them and you show them, look, this is the assignment that I received. Do you notice what I did? they can use this as a reference, so that you show that you're learning with them, and that creates a bond that affects the work they do.
Yeah, totally. It's this mentality that we're in this together, and I'm here to help you, and that's really special.
Definitely.
I want to say a huge thank you, Marcela, for joining us and sharing all your insights this afternoon, this evening. And I'm really excited to hear more about how this year goes. And a big thank you to everyone who's joining us live or watching this afterwards. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions, and the Snorkl team's happy to support you. But Marcela, a huge thank you again to you.
So thank you for inviting me, and hope to have even more good news throughout the school year.
Awesome. Well, much appreciation, and thank you to everyone. Have a great night and a great evening, and I appreciate you being here.
Bye-bye. Thank you.